Hello everyone and welcome back to the WTF1 podcast, episode 12. I'm Matt.
I'm Tommy.
And I'm Jess.
And it's the Hungarian Grand Prix. Hello everyone, we're
Hi.
back.
Yay.
Can't wait to talk about not the greatest race ever.
It was alright.
It was alright?
It was alright.
Yeah.
Decent.
Decent enough.
Yeah.
And Jess, you're obviously here again.
I am.
So excited to be back in the cupboard. We're here for another episode
Fresh.
because we were actually so happy with our last
We
podcast
loved
here,
it,
weren't we?
yeah.
We really enjoyed
It was really cool and nice and
It was like
Yeah.
39 degrees and it smelled horrific when we came out, but it looks good, doesn't it? Look, like Charles and...
I feel like
you
we're
guys
just
gonna drink
embracing
water?
it.
Yeah.
we're rocking it.
And for people that didn't see the last podcast, we're basically in an interim period of moving offices, and so we thought we'd ground ourselves.
In
Yeah.
a cupboard.
In a
Yeah.
cupboard. And I
We've
actually
made it
quite
our
like
own.
it.
We've made it our own.
This is my favourite location so far,
Yeah.
even though I've had 2 locations. Anyway, so 3 word race reviews. I'm going to go first, which I don't think I've ever done,
No,
purely
go
because
for
I've pre-prepared the last 2 minutes ago. Bottas bottles again.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
Fair assessment? I mean, it's a different kind of comparison. It's not the same bottle as he's done before, but I guess you could even use again because he had more than one incident in the race where he made a mistake, and he just had a terrible race.
He bottled it at the start of the season for not going for moves, and then he finally got his elbows out and decided to smack everyone with his elbows out.
Yeah, he got his elbows out at the time when he shouldn't have got his elbows out, when he didn't have the car underneath him with the tyres that he was on. Like, get his elbows out in Bahrain, not now.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Jess? Or...
No.
No? Okay, go on. Hit me.
I actually don't think Bottas bottled anything.
Oh.
I think, again, it was a case of being forced onto a strategy that not necessarily was his original plan A, forced on them by Ferrari. So he had to go in early. That meant his tyres were older. I'm clattering my jewellery everywhere.
Please, no, make more noise.
Yeah, so like his tyres were older,
and knock
and
the
then
tables
I'm just gonna flip the damn table. Hello, I'm back. Here we go. No, I don't think it was his fault, and I think we're gonna dive into it in a little bit more detail once we've got through our 3-way race reviews. But I don't think that any of those instances were his fault, and I'm gonna say it right at the beginning of the podcast. I don't think he should have got a penalty.
Oh, God.
Diving
now
straight
that is
in.
a serious disagreement we're going to have a little bit later on. Tommy.
Mine is Mercedes Rain Fortune.
Those just sound like 3 random words.
Yeah.
That was literally you just making it up
I was
on
making
the
it
spot.
up on the spot. Could you tell?
I mean, did you
Yeah.
not know that it was coming to you? And me...
I had a better one, but I forgot it. But it was along those lines.
Well, mine's similar, so shall I see if mine
Go
was
on.
Rain delivers again.
Yeah, but mine was more the fact that it definitely favoured Mercedes. If you go on free practice results and what the pace was looking like, you thought this was Ferrari's weekend, maybe Vettel's chance to hit back and deliver points. And, you can say that Mercedes got lucky because of the rain, but, I mean, to be fair to Hamilton and Bottas, they delivered the laps when it mattered to do it. Like, they took their opportunity. And on a track where it's difficult to overtake, them starting 1-2, it worked out perfectly for them.
Exactly, and you can't really argue that, although we don't know what their wet weather pace are like in comparison because we didn't really see much from free practice, but wet weather pretty much equalises it for everyone. So it is very much the best drivers will perform, or at least, if you can get a lap in, then you'll be near the front. And Mercedes smashed qualifying and, in my opinion, deserved to win the race.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Red Bull were nowhere on
Yeah,
a track
really
that
weird.
they
Surprising.
thought they were going to completely nail, and that's why they took
And wet
Ricciardo's penalty
wet
earlier
weather
on.
as well. Like, you'd think that would play right into their hands,
Yeah.
especially Verstappen, but he couldn't deliver. Ricciardo didn't deliver. It's weird.
It was interesting, like, because they were saying that they don't do any testing on wet tyres. Maybe they did. Did they do a little bit in Barcelona technically when it was like
Yeah, they
torrential
did. Yeah,
and when it was snowy and all that kind of thing? But so they don't get to test the aerodynamics. So you'll literally have to find out on a wet race if your car's any good in the wet with the wet tyres.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but such a shame because I think this was probably one of the last opportunities that Red Bull were going to have to be dominant.
Probably
Apart from Singapore,
yeah.
but even then, I think maybe Ferrari will. as we thought here. We thought Ferrari were going to run away with it here, but they didn't.
It's a shame the grid wasn't more mixed up.
Yeah.
When essentially you've got wet running, and I said it so many times during the weekend, I cannot believe that we actually saw people running on full wet Pirelli tyres, because normally that just means red flag.
Yeah.
Like it's inters or red flag. So finally you got to see. I've said it, I'm sure you guys have already said it, that if it takes you 2 minutes to do a lap, so be it. If you stay on the track, do the lap, because they were doing like 140s in the session. Like finally you got to see a bit of wet running, and you got a few surprises, I guess, with Gasly and Sainz getting 5th and 6th, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Although we talked a lot about qualifying, not so much about the race. Let's move to the race.
My qualifying review was
3-word race review from fans. We have at henrob321, boring until crashes. At Sean_C_Ryan, interesting Mercedes tactics. At HK Nachyan, Bottas bumper cars. At the Adam Goh, Bottas went Maldonado, and at _George.Alex_ Maldonado felt proud. So I think with the amount of Mercedes messages there, we'll talk about the Bottas versus Vettel and then Bottas versus Ricciardo incidents. From my perspective, Bottas did well to keep Vettel back as long as he did, especially at that first kind of 5 laps or so, because Vettel was very much on fresh tyres and Bottas is in the middle of his stint essentially. And then Vettel had to drop back, didn't it? Because it was more down to the F1 cars and how they still can't follow. Yeah. But he had to drop back 3-4 seconds, which in if you just kind of put yourself in Vettel's shoes, that's a really good move from him, because he could have easily tried to get past Bottas on fresher tyres than he was.
Shred his tyres
and completely messed his tyres and probably finished 4th. Kimi probably would have got him as well. So, and then obviously the incident as well, which was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, he kind of... It was all sort of... It was weird because you thought... It's one of those races where you wanted a bit of tyre wear at the end just to see if it would pay off. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Bottas, they pitted him so early, and realistically they're at the point now, however much both teams say that they don't have a number 2 driver, both teams in that race, it was very much a race where you saw that they're willing to just sacrifice their second driver, essentially put on a bit of a weird strategy in the hope that it pushes that they're using their second drivers as pawns basically against the big guys.
But I mean that's why you have 2 drivers.
Yes.
Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you can test multiple strategies in order to get the biggest benefit at the end. So I don't blame them for doing that, but you're right, I think they're definitely picking the same driver to have the potentially like lesser. But again, it's the same, like when they're on track, the leading car gets the choice of strategy. Yeah. I think the leading driver in the championship gets the choice of overall strategy too. So it's not a case. I think you're right. It does kind of smack of, oh well, if they hadn't have pulled them in early, would they have been right up there and challenging? But that's not what that's not how the way a team thinks. And again, we kind of touched on it on the last podcast, but teams are there to maximize on points and win championships. So it's their prerogative to test out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So but it ultimately led to a pretty interesting end to the race.
Final laps, yeah.
So about the number 2 driver strategies, at the end of the day, they're both second to their teammates in the race. So you've got Bottas behind Hamilton. He was nowhere near the pace of Hamilton. He had to do something different, had to cover off Kimi. And if you're in Ferrari's shoes, you've got to do something different as well. You're trying to beat Bottas. And if you keep them both on the same strategy, are you going to beat Bottas? No, because Bottas will just mirror the strategy of the Ferraris. So, and Kimi getting overtaken by Vettel, I mean, I was just there like, oh my goodness me, it's Kimi's one chance to maybe be the leading Ferrari to take it to Mercedes, and then he gets passed around the outside, and I'm pretty sure that move around the outside has been a very common move at Hungary, because there just seems to be a lot more, or as good a grip around the outside as there is on the inside. So Kimi clearly didn't.
And Vettel was on worse tyres as well.
Yeah, he was on soft. He had a terrible start. If anything, Kimi should have been making moves. But anyway, I don't think it was more of a number 2 driver thing. Bottas was forced onto the strategy, and then Hamilton didn't have to react to Kimi because he was long gone. So anyway, let's move on. That was my point. At the Danny Play comes in with, was Bottas at fault for the accidents he was involved in? Okay, this is where me and Jess are going to disagree, apparently. So the first one was obviously with Vettel. Bottas was 100% at fault for that. I think.
I think it was a racing incident,
Oh, yeah.
but it was more Bottas's fault than Vettel. I can't believe people blame Vettel for that. I
No,
was completely shocked by that.
Someone said in IBR that they were like, Vettel pinched or squeezed Bottas. And it's
Well,
like,
they said
Bottas
it on, I'm sure it was Brundle, and then I think David Coulthard said it on Channel 4 as well. And yes, if that had been Bottas on fresher tyres, maybe you go, all right, he's going on the inside.
Yeah.
But like he's just been past, he's got no grip for a start out the corner, so Vettel was fully ahead.
Yeah.
Like you can see the shadow from under the bridge that Vettel's car is actually like completely
ahead. Yeah.
So of course he's going to turn into that corner, and you've got to think that even if he had taken a wider line, the way Bottas was steaming up the inside anyway, he was probably going to hit him regardless of if he'd left even more room. And yeah, it's a racing incident. I think they got it spot on there that it was a racing incident, but I'd put more blame on Bottas just for the fact that he should have known back out. If it was Verstappen or Grosjean, would have been saying, just back out. Your tyres are shredded. Protect third. Get points for the constructors' title.
I mean,
it's a hopeless attempt, really.
I don't put any blame on Vettel for that incident. As you say, he was clearly ahead, and in the regulations it states that you have to be at least half a car length alongside.
He wasn't even close.
No, and Vettel is literally just taking the corner. Maybe he's taking a slightly defensive line, which he is absolutely entitled to do, and Bottas has just tried to stick one up the inside. So for me, 100% Bottas's fault.
I don't think he stuck one up the inside. I think he was obviously defending hard. He didn't want to relinquish that place, but he was kind of in a desperate situation. But, good on him for not just giving up and going, right, you can go around me, that's fine. I think, it was a risky move from Vettel. By closing the door like that, which I agree he was entitled to do.
Mm-hmm.
In that point, I completely agree. On a car in Bottas's state, because, Bottas understeered, couldn't brake, so Vettel would have been, I think Vettel and Bottas were really lucky they didn't wipe each other out.
Oh yeah, Vettel
was really lucky he didn't get a puncture. Yeah.
More risk on Vettel. He couldn't afford to lose any more points to Hamilton than he already was. So for me, I think it was a risky move from Vettel, which ended up playing out. So fair enough. But I don't think Bottas was trying to stick it up the inside. I think he genuinely just was trying to make it round the corner with a fighting chance of being able to pull back. But I don't think he was making it wasn't a dive bomb move or anything like that. So I agree with you all, as I think it was a racing incident, but I honestly think it's a pretty 50-50 move for me personally. I think Vettel, it was pretty ballsy, and Bottas, it was unfortunate that he just didn't have the grip left.
Yeah, I don't think the Vettel move itself was risky, because for me, he let Bottas drift wide, did the cutback, he was through, and the only thing that I find maybe risky or at least a bit strange was Vettel's line through turn 3, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know why he braked almost a little bit earlier so that he could keep the inside line. Like you could just easily just make be a bit safer. But for me, he may have just messed up his braking slightly and wanted to go deeper. But yeah, you tell me.
Yeah, I completely agree. There is, like I said, I think 20-30% of it. Vettel, I guess he's going for a championship, and like you say, if he'd have done that and been completely wiped out, he is taking a risk. But I think he is entitled to go for that chop. I think they got it spot on with a racing incident.
But again, I'm just trying to go through the thought process of why Vettel made that move there, just purely based on the fact that. Or the move in the way that he did.
I think he was desperate as well, that he'd so many times he saw Bottas came out the corner. He finally got alongside him so he could do the switchback, and you saw Bottas coming off turn 1 or 2, and his wheels were spinning. He got no traction, so Vettel was like, this is my chance. I need to make this happen.
Yeah.
Close the door. And it's racing instinct at the end of the day, isn't it? You're like 180 miles an hour.
And they're not sat there going, or maybe I'll hold off and I'll get him at turn 6 or something.
Yeah. Like, and it is the one and only opportunity really across the lap to do it. So
it's always with these things, it's happening at 180 miles an hour, and then you watch slow-mo
replays
like 8 times, and then you go, actually, and it's like, they've got that one chance.
Let's move on to the more interesting one, which is Bottas versus Ricciardo, which obviously Bottas got a penalty and was also told by Mercedes to let Ricciardo back through.
Yeah,
That was
weird.
stupid of them.
I don't know why they would do that, because Bottas was never going to get any more than a 10-second penalty anyway.
And also, if he crashed into him, like, you can't crash into someone and then go, "Oh, I'll let you back
I'm
through."
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're going to get a penalty. So Bottas might as well have carried on and then argue it afterwards.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, yeah, he still would have just dropped behind and lost the place anyway. But they were going to gain nothing from dropping back, personally.
Yeah.
And Ricciardo gave him the finger as
That was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love how he has time to think about flipping the bird to him.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But yeah, I think for me, the incident, if Bottas was to have stayed ahead of Ricciardo throughout the rest of the race, Bottas slam dunk should have got a penalty for that. You know, Ricciardo, he was going around the outside, of course, but it's not bumper cars. Like, you shouldn't have to deal with Bottas and the fact that his car, his strategy was wrong. He's understeered completely into Ricciardo. Ricciardo's given him more than enough space. Like, Bottas, 100% for me, deserved the penalty, but Jess, you don't think he deserved the penalty, so I'm interested as to why.
I just don't. Again, I think it was a case of, yeah, okay, you have to manage the car that you have underneath you, and he'd already learnt through his incident with Seb that his car wasn't in the best position to brake as late as maybe he did. But again, you could see the car lock up. And I think we've just had instances in the past where we've been a bit more lenient on people where the car fails. And yes, okay, as racing drivers, they're meant to know the limits of the cars. But I think you just seen how much he'd struggled through up until that point. I don't think he was never going to make that turn without causing a collision. So yeah, okay, arguably, do we say that he should have backed out, but then we would have criticised him for backing out. So I don't know. I just don't. For me, again, it's just a racing incident, and it's a case that his tyres were gone, and his wing was completely shredded. He had no downforce. It's like, what we.
But then you'd argue that's why he should have known to back out, because he's got all that damage. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the reason they gave him a penalty was because, for me anyway, is because it was a second incident. He's already ploughed into the side of someone. That's the point where you need to be like, okay, I got away with that. It was a racing incident. But if you go steaming into the side of someone again, that's where they need to say, look,
I don't think he didn't go steaming into the side.
He didn't, but
his brakes failed. He locked up and he slid. He was a passenger in that situation.
But for me, like, that's where, his car is in a bad state, and that was desperation from him. Like, he wasn't making the corner if Ricciardo wasn't there. He used Ricciardo as a brake essentially, because he had locked up, and for me that is causing a collision, which is under the rules of you get a penalty for that. So why should Bottas be allowed to hit Ricciardo, make the corner, and then Ricciardo's car's damaged and carry on and get no kind of penalty? So that's the kind of stance that I take on it. Let's quickly go to @RealPhilipDome. That sounds like he's like live on so Philip, hi. It's not cool. Should Bottas get a grid penalty instead of a useless time penalty? So obviously his penalty that he got didn't affect his race position. No, I don't think so. Personally, I think that's overboard.
They've done time penalties for pretty much everything this year, I think.
But I guess that's more of a question of, do time penalties make a difference?
Yeah.
Whereas a grid penalty, regardless of what happens, will always make a difference to your race.
I think we've said this in the last 3 podcasts.
Yeah, I know.
That's like, do you penalise someone and go, oh, well, Hamilton won the race and he's 19 seconds ahead? Do you go, if we give him a 10-second penalty, even though it's worth a 10-second penalty, do you go, oh, well, it has to be 20 seconds because that eliminates a place? It's like, you just have to give the penalty, and
I think though it's more about what's the biggest deterrent, right? What's the biggest deterrent to stop drivers from making bullish moves and upsetting other people's races? I think a grid penalty is way worse than a time penalty, especially given now that the front runners are so far ahead usually. Okay, it does make a difference if the gap's tiny, but there's too many variables with time. Whereas a grid place penalty, like that's
you're screwed.
you
You've
know
been punished,
the
yeah.
maximum. Even if you put in a stellar qualifying lap and you get pole, the maximum you're starting is 5th. So, and it doesn't have to be 5 grid penalties. They can change the amount of grid penalties. And people are going to be less inclined to throw away their next race over. I mean, we saw in the last race, Hamilton started putting almost 5 seconds on Bottas because he knew that he could neutralise the penalty. So, or at least they'd still get a Mercedes 1-2.
Yeah.
So the fact that teams can play penalties,
that's true.
I think that's not it's clearly then time isn't a big enough deterrent, or it can be completely
It's a weird one
neutralised.
because then you argue that the midfield, and especially like McLaren Honda, they played penalties for years because they knew they were going to be last anyway. We'll take 40 place. Let's put all the new parts in, and then that's when it gets ridiculous as well. So it's a tough one for the stewards.
And
really,
I don't think as long as no one's benefiting from it. So like Bottas, he smashed into Ricciardo, but he was never going to get away with it. That 10-second penalty still covered off the fact that he wouldn't beat Ricciardo. And should he get any more than that? No, because Formula One drivers aren't constantly crashing into each other. I think that's when the issue happens, when they all start dive bombing each other, knowing that there's 30-second gaps behind. But we know at this stage that at least they're not. For fear of it moving on to a Bottas podcast, let's quickly talk about him potentially being a number 2 driver, because that was a big thing that he went on social media about. But at the Adam Goff said Bottas the wingman. And there was a bit of drama between Wolff and Bottas, or potentially not. I don't think there was that much. I think everyone blew it out of proportion. But Wolff said it feels a bit bittersweet. I don't know why, because Valtteri would have deserved the podium because he was such a sensational wingman, which was a terrible,
that was like a dagger in the heart for Bottas.
I think
wasn't
people.
it?
I mean, I can understand why he came out and said that. Like Bottas came out afterwards and said, "Well, that hurts." But to be honest, he was never going to be more than a wingman in that race. There was no point in that race where Bottas could have got P1. So it doesn't matter. Like Lewis could equally have been Bottas's wingman. I mean, Bottas did act like a wingman. He stopped Vettel on fresh tyres from getting anywhere near Hamilton.
And at the start as well, he covered the Ferraris brilliantly.
So I don't think people are taking this wildly out of context, I think. Yes, okay, Toto Wolff is the team principal. He should think about his choice of words better. But oh my God, if we all did that, we would never say anything. Like he didn't mean it that Bottas is the number 2 driver. He meant it in like
a great supporting role. Which was what he was.
Protected Lewis's win and brought home some points for the team. Unfortunately, not as many as they were hoping for. But it's like, just get over it.
I think it was a stressful race for Bottas, and I noticed even on Channel 4 afterwards when Lee Mackenzie was interviewing, he looked very stressed, and Lee Mackenzie, I think he was talking about his strategy, and he was like, I pitted too early, and she like hit back with the question, well, did they pit you early because they were just trying to cover the Ferraris? And it's almost like they're planting this thing in his head where it's, he's feeling that pressure now of I guess because he's had such a great season and everyone's been talking about if he hadn't have had all this bad luck he could be up there, and now he's seeing himself, and now people are saying like, you're going to be a number 2 driver. It must really be painful for him.
Yeah, definitely. And he came out saying, I have not called a meeting with the bosses for Toto saying I was the perfect wingman in this race. There is no need to. I was disappointed with my end result in the race and saw everything in a negative way for a moment. I know what he meant. And I think with that, we move on.
No more Bottas.
I love how we got the other number 2 Finn, Kimi Raikkonen. There was quite an interesting thing about his drinks bottle and the fact that they forgot to connect it. And then there was this whole revelation of, Kimi didn't have his drinks bottle. And then Marcus Ericsson came in with a tweet saying that he hadn't had a drink system installed for over 2 years.
Because he hadn't had a drink for 2 years.
He hasn't had a drink.
I knew he's a robot.
Because it weighs around 1.5 kilograms, so they choose not to use it because of the weight.
I think Ocon might be the same as well.
Really, because they're quite tall drivers, aren't they? And that's crazy to think when you've got like the Singapore races and Bahrain and all these races where I can't even imagine how hot it is.
Everyone was singing the praises of Kimi, saying like, how is he doing this? Like, they're incredible athletes, and then Ericsson just drops like, I've not had one for 2 years.
It's quite impressive.
That
I think that again highlights the athleticism of all these drivers, that they can go an hour and a half absolutely hammering it.
I mean, how many kilos do they lose on average?
3.
I think it was 3, and that's just in sweat.
Yeah.
and well, losing water. So that's incredible. Like, can you imagine going to the gym and an hour and a half later being 3 kilos lighter? You'd die. Like, you would actually die. Like, I think you would genuinely, I would anyway, because I'm not that fit. So, like, I think, it is incredible. But I guess, how much, and this is an open question, it might sound a bit ignorant, but how much can 1.5 kilos save on a car like that? I guess it's more to do with the driver. And does that have more to do with, I guess what people were calling for is that there should just be a standardized weight for...
Yeah, and they're doing that
which
next
is what
year,
they're
aren't
doing.
they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It does highlight that.
Because it's ridiculous. That,
I mean, do you remember when Jenson Button lost, like, a stupid amount
and
of
Weber
weight?
as well, like, they look like skeletons.
It was scary. I was like, how can you even hold the steering wheel in place? Because you've got nothing
like,
to
look
you.
at Ocon, like, he's like a stick figure,
skinny,
really. And you're like, how do you have the muscle to drive an F1 car? But obviously he does.
I think Lewis came out saying, didn't he, like, he can't wait to get rid of his chicken legs.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because he can't have any muscle mass on his legs because it weighs too much.
It's dangerous as well. Like the fact that Marcus Ericsson's been allowed to go without a drinks bottle for 2 years. Like, how is that even like under health and safety regulations? But either or, we'll move on. A slightly more, I guess, negative and sad tone was Sergio Marchionne's death, which kind of sort of highlighted the whole tough weekend for Ferrari, and it was sad news for them, and it was really out of the blue, wasn't it? It was just
Well, he was ill, wasn't he? It came very quickly, and then it was a tough weekend for them. That, especially, what I always find is they had the minute of silence before the race. I think that must be really hard on the team to essentially do that right before the race, and then they have to like get straight in.
Emotions start.
And they have to go into the frame of mind of like. I always thought when they did, I think it was 3 years ago, same track, Hungary, when Bianchi died, and all the drivers, they had that like huddle around, and then it was like, let's go racing. And that race, I don't know if you remember, was absolutely crazy. And I think people just couldn't let their head like get back into the zone or whatever. So it's a shame that they couldn't. I mean, they got a 2-3, but I think they're very much hoping for a 1-2, especially on a track that really suits them as well.
Yeah, and it would have been a nice tribute as well if they had the pace. They could have done it, but moving on. Another engine problem for Red Bull. Your man Verstappen out again. I was waiting for the triple like in Silverstone where all of our favourite drivers were out. Like mine was out in lap 1, yours was out in lap 10 or something.
It's crazy that he retired that early. I think the reason he was so frustrated was because it was so early, and we say it all the time that this hybrid era, like, and you probably hate this when you have to do the race rundown on internet reactions and say all the names, but barely anyone retires from races. Not like when I started watching, where like 10 people finished a race. But Red Bull, I saw a stat that was 8 DNFs in 12 races now, which is just mad.
Horrendous.
And to do it in 10, was it 5 laps, 6 laps, something like that, for your engine to go immediately, it's bad. Especially
when the team, especially like around Hungary, were nowhere in comparison to where they've been in some races this year. It's not like they're pushing the car to a limit where they're up with Ferrari and Mercedes. Because I mean, maybe there's some kind of you can kind of take something from that if they're just pushing the car too hard. But Red Bull were nowhere, a track that they expected to be really.
Well, Toro Rosso beat them in quali.
Yeah.
So they had Gasly ahead of Max.
Gasly had another Bahrain weekend, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Very much just chilling in 6th, wasn't he?
And I guess that shows that the Honda isn't as bad as everyone thought it was. And if Gasly's getting 6, just think what a Red Bull chassis would do with that engine.
Yeah,
because
it's all speculation at the moment.
Yeah, I know, but like you'd think they'd be up there. I think it's the right decision for them to go to Honda completely, and I think.
Interestingly, though, I have to commend, because obviously one of the biggest stories to come out of it was Max's rather expletive-full radio message. Yeah. But he has come out afterwards, which I think is really mature of him, to kind of explain and to say, look, I was wrong. He did say, like, that message was wrong of me to say.
Can I just quickly say that message? Verstappen radio message, this is with the bleeps, don't worry. Can I not just go ahead? I don't care if this engine blows up, Verstappen said on his team radio. What a joke all the time with this. Honestly.
Well self-censored.
Damn.
Yeah.
I should be like a censor machine. Carry on, Jess.
But yeah, so I think I just wanted to point out that it was good of him to come out and publicly say that he was wrong to say that, because the thing is like, obviously they're frustrated. It smacks of like McLaren, Honda, Alonso frustrations, but it doesn't help anybody. Everybody's frustrated, but it really doesn't help anyone to just barrage and complain.
I think the radio you can always take with a bit of a pinch of salt.
They are high on adrenaline.
Yeah, exactly. Because I noticed something else that came out of that race that was quite funny was Grosjean took Alonso, didn't he, on the restart?
Yeah.
And Alonso straight away, because as is their natural instinct, I mean, they always complain about each other. And then as soon as they get out of the car and they can cool down, I mean, Alonso said, I think Grosjean must have jumped the start there and was complaining about it.
Yeah.
And now he's like addressed those comments and said, okay, fair play, Grosjean, you did fine. But obviously they can't be rational when they're driving 200 miles an hour and they're stressed.
I would love it. Like I would love it in like an alternate universe where they all kind of take a breath and go, oh no, that's fine.
Yeah.
And that everybody's like really well behaved. I mean, it'd be boring, but just for one race, it'd be really funny.
Alonso just coming over the radio. That was a great move, Grosjean. Yeah, no, good.
Instead of flipping the bird, just like clapping. Well done, sir.
You'd love it in the old days if you could have heard team radio for like Senna and Prost, because I'm sure they're exactly the same. Like, oh, he cut the track, he went off, he's crashed into me. They'd all be the same. Like anything to get the edge on your rival.
Could you imagine what Hunt said?
Well, I reckon it's probably something that rhymes with that. Actually, even like playing F1 games, you're raging. You just rage.
Yeah, like, and that doesn't. Well, it doesn't. I say that. Sorry, esports people. It doesn't matter. Like compared to a Formula One, this is that. Yeah, and you're still raging. Like, just think what people say on Twitter during a race, and then think that you're the actual driver. Like, it's your.
Take radio messages with a pinch of salt. Yeah. Although Alonso came out this weekend also saying that he thinks that F1 are obsessed with his radio messages and play them too often.
Stop being a meme. Memeable.
Like something like they obviously they pick the juiciest ones that they're allowed to transmit, but there is a limit, right? There's a limit agreed of how much that they can share on the television, but if you're giving a ton of chatter and everyone else is relatively quiet, of course they're going to pick you.
Yeah, especially when you're just insulting the team or insulting someone. Like,
just don't say anything. Yeah. Could you imagine, like, if he went for one race and just kind of gave one-word answers?
Didn't say anything, just replied with "pick confirm" or something. That was it.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting one. Just quickly again on the Red Bull versus Renault war thing, there was that Christian Horner statement, which was really quite interesting. He said, I'm not going to get drawn into saying too much, but we pay multi-millions of pounds for these engines for a first-class product, a state-of-the-art product, and you can see it's quite clearly some way below that. So it is frustrating. That is what it is. We still have Daniel in the race now. We'll let Cyril come up with his excuses afterwards.
I love that, right? I'm not gonna say anything, but like actually, like,
drawn into saying too much.
Their relationship is like
dreadful, isn't it?
So sour.
Like
and Cyril, I noticed there was a quote from him today that he said something like, "At Renault, we've not been listening to what Christian Horner said since 2015," which is like, whoa.
Also, I think again, I know it's not exactly the same thing, but had Renault been breaking down all the time, then maybe you'd go, okay, there's something not quite right with that engine.
Yeah, but it's always Red Bull.
It's always Red Bull, and it's always the battery that goes wrong.
And without causing some massive, insane conspiracy theory,
please.
But
I'm not going to say too much.
I'm not going to come out with some sweeping statement. But
I remember last year when Renault were catching Toro Rosso in the championship, and there was all those allegations that all the Renault started failing at the Toro Rosso at the end of the year when Renault needed to catch up in the championship, and now Red Bull have terminated their contract. I saw someone, probably one of the comments on our thing, said, like now it started failing again, because I think wasn't I can't remember if it was this weekend or last weekend that Ricciardo wanted a new engine and Renault were like, nah. There was some kind of hoo-ha about they weren't giving him parts.
It was the last race. It was Germany, right?
Germany, yeah.
I think
used parts.
Because he was in an interview on one of the TV broadcasters this weekend trying to explain what happened in Germany, and he basically said, "Yeah, we asked for a new part," and Renault said no.
Yeah, so they're now just like, no, you're right.
Yeah.
And I guess
And obviously, like Renault, their mission statement is to be the best Renault-powered car on the grid.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Orcs.
Tinfoil hats, everyone.
Yeah.
But then you think it's like if they get found out for doing that, that's like illegal, and they could get sued.
Of course,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you know here at WTF1 we don't want to start we don't want to be the root of conspiracy. Or
Yeah,
anything
Yeah,
like
exactly.
we're completely unbiased.
Disclaimer.
Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, like, this goes down.
Quite a funny moment again, and to do with Red Bull. At Brandon_Grimmer1 was his 3-word race review was Big Dick Energy. I don't know if you saw this, Jess. Did you see this yet, Ricciardo? So Ricciardo was in the cockpit, and one of his mechanics just turned over some kind of sheet or whatever, and it said BDE, and he just comes over the team radio and says Big Dick Energy.
Big Dick Energy. Is that some kind of rival to Red Bull energy drinks?
Well, maybe that was his like mindset for the race. Big dick energy.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair,
Yeah.
he brought it.
He did
Like
bring Big
Yeah.
Dick, yeah.
on a track.
You bought his
Jesus.
big dick.
On a racetrack that's meant it's Monaco without walls, apparently. Up to P4.
Yeah, he had a pretty good car there, didn't he? So, but he did do a good drive for sure. Like he saw off a lot of
Yeah.
He was on fire.
Yeah.
I think,
He did
and
some good moves.
my prediction for this race was that he would cross the line on fire. I think technically I'm correct.
You're like, actually, I meant metaphorically. That's
Exactly.
On fire.
You didn't say whether
On
I
fire
meant
swearing
actually.
at Bottas.
There we go. See?
Yeah.
But I think he had a great race.
Yeah, no, he did have a really good race.
Just wasn't driver of the day.
That's what we're about to come on. Ricciardo was voted driver of the day. Who were ours? Tommy, you just said he wasn't driver of the day. Who was driver of the day?
Gasly,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, driver of the weekend.
Just-
I'd say, yeah.
How he managed to keep his Toro Rosso there.
Well, and
You-
so far ahead
yeah.
of the Haas as well.
Qualify so well, and then you just think, well, he's going to get mugged by both Renaults, both Haases. I need to think about it all the time. Yeah, like, but he kept P6 the whole race. Really good pace.
Yeah.
Just such a good drive.
And interestingly,
drive.
Sainz dropped way back.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah,
Sainz,
he got mugged
just-
right at the start. He got
What?
mugged off.
Who hit
Mugged.
Sainz?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was Verstappen hit Sainz, but then Ericsson
Yeah.
just locomoted.
How that didn't end either
Yeah.
of their races is beyond me. I don't
Ericsson
know where
was
Marcus...
very dehydrated, clearly.
Yeah.
pull
He was
out
seeing
the
things
water.
at that point.
I
He'd
haven't
been on the
drunk-
grid too long.
I haven't drunk for 2 years.
There was just a massive can of Big Dick Energy on the track.
Wow.
Wow. And there's the thumbnail.
R-rated. That is definitely the quote. Yeah, I think I have to agree. Yeah, Gasly didn't come into my mind, but yeah, I think mainly because he wasn't seen throughout the race. He was in no man's land and,
Is another
and came
like
home in
Grosjean
sixth.
last week,
which-
another midfield guy that just
Yeah.
does really well, but there's no mention.
I think if it just finished sixth, maybe like scraped ahead of everyone else, I maybe wouldn't have chosen him. But it was the fact that he had pulled a gap to the Haas's. Brendan Hartley was out the points. Sorry, Ali. And you know, it was just it was a great drive from him. So Gasly for me, and you're going to say
Gasly
Lewis
as well.
Hamilton.
No, actually, I'm not.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
I think, like, obviously Lewis had a very good weekend, but he didn't do. I don't know. My brain
Lewis.
shuts down.
Trying to think of someone.
I don't think he had like an amazing weekend. Like he did everything right.
Did have an amazing weekend. Got pole. Won
Got
the
pole
race.
one by
In the wet. No, I
15
have to say,
seconds or
I think for his qualifying lap for me was
Decent.
just outstanding, decent.
Decent.
And I love watching him in the wet.
Oh, that's now the thumbnail
Yeah,
quote.
the thumbnail is changing relentlessly during this podcast.
I feel like every time we get to the end of this podcast, I just
You just come out with some
come out
serious
with
memes.
some strange things.
So you like
So-
watching him when he's wet? No, when
In the wet.
In the wet.
In the wet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
But Ricciardo is my driver of the day,
Okay.
purely based on the fact that he pulled off some pretty stellar overtakes on a track where apparently overtaking is not the one. So for me, driver of the day, Ricciardo.
January.
So I agree
Good
with the general populace.
Consensus.
public.
Cool. Excellent. Before the next race, which is a long way away now, unfortunately, sad news. Some also sad
face
news
crying.
was Force India going into administration.
Yeah.
And obviously that will be the
Sucks.
big news going into the summer break. Can they get bought out by Lawrence Stroll? Probably. Even though everyone thinks it'll be terrible for Formula One, I personally think it will be as well.
I mean, come on. What kind of a driver do you have to be to get your daddy to buy you a
Dad,
team?
can you buy Mercedes, please? Yeah.
It's,
I mean,
it's an
okay.
interesting new sort of motorsport ladder that normally you kind of work your way up through the field on talent, but instead your dad just buys the teams.
Yeah.
And you slowly, like, next will be like maybe Renault, and then he'll buy Ferrari and put Stroll in there.
Then he'll buy the sport.
Yeah.
I mean,
He will be the only driver left.
I mean, getting back, maybe taking a step back before we go full throttle on Stroll.
Full Stroll.
Full Stroll. Like, obviously, the thing is, like, I can't decide in my mind, like, is it genuinely him buying a team for his son, or is it just the case that he wants to invest in F1 and he has the means to do so?
I think it's probably both, because Force India is a great investment.
It just must be like, it must be really hard for poor little billionaire son Stroll. World's smallest violin, that was, by the way, not me, just having an episode.
And the Twitter voice at the same time.
Yeah, I know, right? But a part of me does feel sorry for him, because he is never gonna prove to the motorsport community that he deserves that seat.
He can't.
Never.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Even if he was talented enough, no one will ever say that he deserved that seat.
Well, yeah, he dominated
bought
the
that
F3
seat.
title, and people still just go, oh, he's a pay driver.
Exactly.
And whatever
So-
he does, like you say, he can't do it. I mean, it's hard to feel sorry for a son of a billionaire that's been bought. But at the end of the day...
He didn't ask to be the son of a billionaire.
Yeah. If my dad wanted to buy an F1 team and said, do you want to drive? I'd be like, hell yeah.
Let's move back to Force India. So what do we think at RoboHamster01? What do you think of the whole situation at Force India? And at RUW_football_F1 says, please, your views on Force India.
It's
sad.
Yeah, it is very sad, obviously. But it's interesting that obviously it was all pushed into place by Perez. And everyone was kind of like, why the hell would Perez, like, this is his team.
Why would Perez
obviously,
do this?
they owe him a lot of money. But I'm glad that it was then communicated that actually it was in good faith, and it's actually to save the team.
You got to feel sorry for him that he's put in that situation. Essentially, like, he's there to drive the car, not try and save the team on his own. It's, again, like, it's just such a rubbish situation. And while it was a big shame when Manor, Caterham and HRT ended up going, you kind of understand that they entered Formula One thinking there'd be a budget cap. There wasn't.
Yeah.
But for a team that finished fourth and is punching so far above their weight to be in this situation, it's like there's something clearly wrong with the sport if that happens.
I mean, I think obviously you have to look at management and go, were resources put where resources should be put? But I agree. I agree, Tommy. It does put a massive spotlight on the fact that the current payment system in F1 is not fair. And even more unfair is the fact
They're not
that
going to get it now.
Williams and McLaren have made a move to stop them.
And Renault,
I
believe,
have made a move to stop them receiving
their prize
money at the end of the year.
Wow, that's a dick move.
So, I mean, I've not seen the statements from the teams as to why they've done that. But for me, like, you know, it just feels unsportsmanlike.
To try and kill off a team.
To kill off a
in
team.
sport that's better than you.
Especially Williams. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
A team that deserves the most help out of anybody on the grid.
They could easily be in the same situation. But then I've also seen that Force India did the same to Manor. So a lot of people are like...
What goes around comes around.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I wasn't aware of that, so maybe, but, you know,
I think as
for
well,
me, like, F1 needs teams that bring added extra to the sport, and I think Force India is one of those teams. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, they're going to get...
It shouldn't be up to the teams
They'll
to
have a
save,
buyer.
is what I'm trying to say. They shouldn't be up to the teams to save their other
I 100% do not doubt
it should be down to the powers that be to go, we'll pay you prize money. You've raced X amount of races. You've finished where you've finished. Why the hell should it be? I mean, I guess it's because the teams form part of the governing body, and therefore they have a right to vote. but it does smack of being unfair because you can just take your competitors out like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, bullet point is, in a couple of weeks, Force India should have a new buyer.
Yeah,
so
I have no doubt that they will be bought out.
Big
the
dick energy.
optimistic.
Big dick energy going to buy him.
Big Dick Racing.
So let's move on to the predictions. So we have 3 predictions that
Yeah,
we're
can we
both
move
all
on
going
quickly
to make.
because it is bloody hot in here.
Yes, and Ali would be losing his mind at the amount of time we've gone on for, but it's fine.
Oh, dear.
3 random predictions for each of us over the course of the summer break. So we're not going to do predictions for the race purely because it's so long away. But we're going to do 3 random predictions that we think will happen in the F1 world. My 3 are: Lewis will tell us not to eat meat at least twice on social media.
He's using his platform, Matty.
He's using
For
his platform.
good.
I know, but there's using his platform, and then there's just going along a story, and then a cow's being killed, and you're like, well, that's brilliant.
That is true. He's a bit extreme.
But then he's trying to make a point. Whatever. So I think he'll do that twice. Lawrence Stroll will buy Force India. I think that will unfortunately be the case, but I think there'll be other buyers. But I just, for some reason, think that will happen. And Daniel Ricciardo will re-sign with Red Bull.
Nice.
Your 3, please,
My
Tommy.
3, I'm definitely not reading them off your laptop because
Yeah.
I definitely remember
They're
what
here
I
if you want them as well.
said.
I brought the list.
Kimi
with me.
Raikkonen will be re-signed as well,
Good joke.
which
Your friends are going to be raging. The ones that have been on the tour for Kimi Raikkonen's farewell for the last 4 years,
Yeah,
5 years.
yeah. You're gonna have to go on tour again, guys.
well,
Sorry.
I was convinced that he would go, but he's been really good recently, to be fair to him. And I
Yep.
think that
And he's integrating his son to the sport a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And yeah. Maybe. Okay.
Which team though?
with Ferrari.
Sauber.
Oh, sorry. What, Kimi? Kimi will
Kimi-
just re-sign with Ferrari.
He's
He'll
gonna
stay-
re-sign
yeah,
with
I
Ferrari.
think he'll,
So not Charles
sorry,
Leclerc. Okay.
Yeah, and there'll be some kind of F1 track that gets into trouble.
Silverstone.
And yeah, probably Silverstone, and they'll be like, "Oh, we're going to Donington instead," and
Yeah.
it won't happen. But there'll be
And it'll be
some
fine.
kind of massive hoo-ha over money and all that kind
Yep.
of stuff. And a driver will have a minor accident during the summer break, probably on like a jet ski or a bike. I know last year there was a great story that Marcus Ericsson crashed his bike into a chicken and hurt his arm. So I'm hoping F1 drivers, if you're listening, you've got to top that.
Okay. And
Don't
Jess.
get too injured, but you know,
Also, Jack Aitken,
yeah.
he managed to mangle his leg in a bike chain the last time he was on
yeah,
holiday, didn't
there
he?
we go. So someone's going to do it.
Okay.
Jess.
My 3 are kind of going along your lines, Matty, but
Lewis
I
will
think
social.
Lewis will #bless us with a sunset picture and some inspirational quotes about love.
Nice.
Probably done that right now.
Yeah,
During this
probably. Probably. But, you know, we need more love in the world, so that's a good
Yeah.
thing. I think Matty will find over 3 ways to mention Charles on Twitter.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He retweeted me my last tweet, and I didn't even tag him. I was like, what?
It must be
Lost my shoe.
Did any
It's
of your followers tag him in the comments?
I don't know. He follows me, so it's
We
fine.
need to do some
He saw it on the
detective work.
timeline.
Right.
Cheers, Charles.
And
See you
my
soon.
my other random one is one of the drivers will get engaged.
Wow.
Charles to Matt.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry,
oh my
Jenny.
god, that'd be like the cutest wedding ever.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
We did get a comment about some fan fiction with you and Charles.
Oh God.
Can we please? Can you
be fun.
please do that? Because that would be
Yeah.
amazing. Whoever you are.
So we're going to create a bingo chart and post it ahead of the Belgian Grand Prix.
yeah,
You can
so-
tick them off throughout the weekend, Tommy.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know
Well,
if it's
during
going to
the
work
summer
for summer break.
Summer break. We'll just post it and we can
See what
happens
If it happens, we'll post it again with that bit
with the bit crossed
crossed
out.
out.
So the predictions that we have put out, I'm talking to that one, nice. That you can also share your crazy predictions in the comments if you're still with us, which you of course will be, or tweet us if you're listening on audio, and we'll see some funny stuff. We'll have a look. We're going to do like a mid-season podcast, aren't we? Like just to review what's happened.
When Force India get bought and
cetera.
Raikkonen's resigned and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
and all that.
Basically, we just can't stand the fact that we might not get to
We just
chat
wanna come
shit
back
for.
And we
like
just
4
we just
weeks.
really want to be in this cupboard as well. It's
Yeah.
so
I mean, I love
cool
it.
in here.
It's nice.
It's so nice.
I am roasting.
Manos, our cameraman, is actually melting away.
Right, and on that note, I think we should say goodbye. Do you?
Goodbye.
I want to get some
Goodbye.
fresh air.
No.
So, thank you very much for watching this episode 12
Or
of
listening.
the WTF1 podcast. Watching, listening, feeling,
We love-
absorbing.
We love you all,
Absorbing.
and love conquers all.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
okay. Big dick energy. I think that's a better one to end it on. We'll see you soon for the mid-season podcast.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.